Hey everyone, and welcome back to Thesaurus Thrive. Have you ever felt like English speakers talk too fast? Like you understand the words, but when they're all put together quickly, it just disappears?
Oh, absolutely, Lily. That's a feeling I know so well, especially when I was starting out. It's like your brain is trying to catch up, but the words are just flying by like a train.
Exactly! It's super frustrating, right? You put in all that effort to learn vocabulary and grammar, but then in a real conversation, it feels like it all goes out the window. Well, today, Ava and I are going to share one of the most effective and honestly most enjoyable ways to fix that problem: practicing listening with slow English stories.
Yes, slow English stories are a game changer. They really are. They're not just for beginners either. Even intermediate learners can get so much out of them. We're going to talk about why they work, how to use them effectively, and give you some practical steps to boost your listening confidence.
So let's jump right in. Why slow English stories, Ava? What's the big benefit here?
Well, the most obvious one, of course, is clarity. When someone speaks slowly, you can actually hear each word clearly. You can distinguish between words that might sound similar at native speed. It gives your brain time to process.
Time to process. That's key, because when you're learning, your brain is doing a lot of work. It's not just hearing the sound, it's trying to match that sound to a word you know, understand its meaning, figure out the grammar, and then piece it all together to form a complete thought. That takes precious seconds.
Right, and when the speaker goes too fast, those seconds are just not there. You miss a word, then another, and suddenly you've lost the whole meaning. With slow English, you get a moment. That tiny pause, that slightly longer vowel sound, it all helps you latch on to the information.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Imagine trying to catch a ball. If someone throws it super fast, you might miss it. But if they throw it a little slower, you have time to adjust your hands and catch it. Slow English stories are like catching a slowly thrown ball. You can grab each word.
That's a great analogy, Lily. And it's not just about catching individual words, is it? It's also about understanding the flow, the rhythm, and the intonation of English. When it's slow, you can actually hear where sentences end, where pauses naturally occur, and how the voice goes up and down.
That's a huge point, Ava. Many learners struggle with intonation and stress. They might pronounce words correctly but sound a bit flat or robotic because they haven't quite grasped the natural musicality of English. Slow stories highlight that musicality. You can almost feel the emphasis on certain words.
It's true, and this isn't just for listening, you know. When you hear the correct rhythm and intonation at a slower pace, it actually helps you practice your own speaking. You start to unconsciously imitate those patterns, making your own spoken English sound more natural and fluent.
So, in essence, slow English stories are building a solid foundation. They're helping you with word recognition, comprehension, pronunciation, intonation, and even speaking. It's like a multi-tool for English learning.
Absolutely. Now, what kind of stories are we talking about here, Lily? Are we looking for complex novels or something simpler?
Great question. For effective slow English practice, we want stories that are relatable and simple. Think daily life situations, short anecdotes, simple narratives. Nothing too abstract or full of super complex vocabulary or intricate plot twists. We want to focus on common English usage.
So, something about a morning routine, or going to the grocery store, or maybe a simple trip to the park? Things that connect to everyday experiences?
Exactly. Because when the topic is familiar, your brain doesn't have to work as hard to understand the general context. It can then dedicate more of its energy to understanding the language itself, the specific words, phrases, and sentence structures. If the story is too complicated, you might get lost in the plot and miss the language learning opportunity.
That makes perfect sense. Simpler stories also tend to use more common vocabulary, which is exactly what learners need to master first. You don't want to be overwhelmed by academic jargon when you're still building your basic listening skills.
Right. We're aiming for a sweet spot where it's challenging enough to learn new things, but not so challenging that it becomes discouraging. Remember, the goal is to build confidence, not to make you feel like you're climbing Mount Everest.
So, once we have a good slow English story, how do we actually listen to it effectively? Is it just about pressing play and hoping for the best?
That's where the strategy comes in, Ava. It's not just passive listening. We want to engage in active listening. Think of it as a multi-step process. First, listen for the main idea. Don't worry about every single word.
Okay. So the first time, just try to get the gist, the general topic, what the story is basically about. Don't stress if I miss a few words here and there.
Precisely. The main goal of the first listen is to answer questions like, who is the story about? What generally happens? Where does it take place? Just get that broad understanding. Your brain will start creating a mental framework.
And then, what's step 2?
For the second listen, you can start focusing on more details. Now that you have the main idea, your brain can relax a bit and pay attention to specific information. Try to catch keywords, actions, descriptions, maybe even try to identify some new vocabulary.
So, the first time, I'm painting with a big brush, getting the whole picture. The second time, I'm adding some color and lines, trying to see the specific objects in the picture.
Fantastic analogy, Ava. And for the third listen, this is where you can really dive deep. If there's a transcript available, this is the time to use it. You can follow along, identify any words you still don't know, and really focus on the pronunciation and intonation.
The transcript. That's so helpful, especially for those tricky words where you just can't quite make out the spelling or meaning just by listening. It connects the sound to the written word.
Absolutely. It bridges the gap between listening and reading. And even without a transcript, on the third listen, you can try to repeat phrases or sentences after the speaker. This is powerful for improving your own speaking and pronunciation.
That's a really comprehensive approach. So it's not just listening, it's active listening, repeating, and understanding.
Exactly. Now, to make this even more practical, let's try a very short, simple story together. I'll tell it slowly, and then we can discuss it, just like you would during your practice. How does that sound?
Perfect. I'm ready to listen.
Okay, here's our story. Listen carefully the first time for the main idea. Mark loves his mornings. Every day, he wakes up at 6 a.m. First, he stretches for 10 minutes. Then he drinks a large glass of water. After that, Mark makes a simple breakfast toast with jam and a cup of coffee. He always reads the news on his phone while he eats. By 7 a.m., Mark feels ready for his day. He smiles and says, "Good morning, world."
Okay, so my first impression, the main idea, it's about Mark and his morning routine. It sounds like he has a very organized and positive start to his day.
Excellent. You got the main idea perfectly. Now let's listen again. This time, try to catch specific details. What time does he wake up? What does he do first? What does he eat for breakfast? What does he do while eating?
All right, here we go again. Mark loves his mornings. Every day, he wakes up at 6 a.m. First, he stretches for 10 minutes. Then, he drinks a large glass of water. After that, Mark makes a simple breakfast toast with jam and a cup of coffee. He always reads the news on his phone while he eats. By 7 a.m., Mark feels ready for his day. He smiles and says, "Good morning, world."
Okay, so specific details. He wakes up at 6 a.m. First, he stretches for 10 minutes. Then he drinks a large glass of water. For breakfast, he has toast with jam and coffee. And while he eats, he reads the news on his phone. He's ready by 7 a.m. Wow, I caught so much more that time.
See how that works? Your brain already had the general context, so it could focus on the specifics. Now, let's talk about some vocabulary and phrases from that short story. We heard wakes up, stretches, drinks a large glass of water, makes a simple breakfast toast with jam, cup of coffee, reads the news on his phone, feels ready for his day.
Those are all very common phrases for talking about a morning routine. Stretches for 10 minutes is a nice detail, and feels ready for his day is a great way to express readiness.
Exactly. And notice the natural flow of time words. Every day, first, then after that, while he eats, by 7 a.m. These are very common sequence words that help link ideas smoothly in English.
That's a fantastic point. Listening to slow stories really helps you pick up on those connector words and phrases that make English sound so much more natural. You hear them in context, so you understand their function without needing a grammar lesson.
Right, it's language acquisition, not just language learning. You're internalizing how native speakers connect their thoughts. Now, for the third listen, imagine you have the transcript. You'd read along and maybe try to repeat some of these phrases. So, let's practice some of them right now, just like you would at home.
Excellent idea. This is where we make it active.
Okay, everyone listening, repeat after me. Don't be shy, say it out loud. First phrase, he wakes up at 6 a.m.
Your turn. He wakes up at 6 a.m.
Good. Next one, he stretches for 10 minutes.
Repeat. He stretches for 10 minutes.
Fantastic. Now a longer one, he drinks a large glass of water.
Go ahead. He drinks a large glass of water.
One more, he reads the news on his phone.
Your turn. He reads the news on his phone.
And the last one, a full sentence. By 7 a.m., Mark feels ready for his day.
Repeat after me. By 7 a.m., Mark feels ready for his day.
That felt really good, even for me. It shows you how just repeating a phrase slowly can help you feel the words, the pronunciation, and the rhythm in your mouth. You really shouldn't skip that step.
Exactly, Ava. It's not enough to just hear it. You have to try producing it. It builds muscle memory for your mouth and tongue, which is so important for fluency. So we've talked about what slow English stories are and how to listen. Now let's talk a little more about how listening to stories can naturally build your vocabulary.
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts. It's so much more effective than just memorizing word lists.
Definitely. When you learn words from a story, you're not just learning the definition, you're learning them in context. For example, in our story about Mark, we heard stretches. If you just saw stretch in a dictionary, you might think of stretching a rubber band. But in the story, you understood it meant moving your body to make muscles longer, because it was he stretches in the morning, right?
Right. It's clear from the context that it's a physical activity, and when you hear it repeated in stories or different situations, that meaning becomes even stronger in your mind. It becomes part of your active vocabulary, not just something you recognize passively.
Absolutely. Let's take another example. Imagine a story where someone says, she gazed at the stars. Gazed means looked, right? But the context, at the stars, tells you it's a long, steady, perhaps admiring look. It adds emotion and nuance that a simple definition of look wouldn't give you.
That's brilliant. And because the stories are slow, you have that extra moment to process the new word in its environment. You can mentally pause and think, gazed here means more than just a quick look. It's a deep, thoughtful look.
Yes, exactly. It helps you build a more intuitive understanding of words. And because stories are often engaging, you're more likely to remember the words because they're linked to a character, an event, or an emotion.
It's like your brain creates a little story folder for each new word, making it easier to retrieve later. So you're not just learning vocabulary, you're learning how to use vocabulary naturally.
Exactly right. This is why natural repetition is so powerful in stories. You might hear the same common phrases or vocabulary items appear in different stories or slightly different contexts, which reinforces your understanding without feeling like boring drills.
And the great thing is, there are so many resources out there for slow English stories. You can find podcasts, YouTube channels like ours, of course, and even websites dedicated to this. Just search for Slow English Stories or English Listening Practice Slow Speed.
Yes, the key is to find material that you enjoy. If the story is interesting to you, you'll be much more motivated to listen multiple times and really engage with the language.
Okay, so we've covered the why and the how-to. Let's imagine a real-life scenario where someone is using this technique. Lily, have you ever recommended slow English stories to a friend or a student, and what was their experience like?
Oh, absolutely, Ava. I had a student, let's call her Sarah, who was really struggling with listening comprehension. She felt overwhelmed by movies and even regular podcasts. I suggested she try listening to a slow English story podcast focusing on daily life topics.
And how did that go for her?
Initially, she was a bit skeptical. She thought it might be too boring, but I encouraged her to try the multi-step listening process we just discussed. After a week, she came back to me beaming. She said, "Lily, it's like magic. I can actually understand the whole story now."
That's fantastic. I love hearing stories like that. What made the biggest difference for her, do you think?
She said two things really helped. First, the slower pace allowed her to catch the connections between words, something she always missed before. And second, The fact that the stories were about everyday situations made them very relatable, so she didn't have to struggle with complex topics on top of language.
That makes perfect sense. Relatability reduces cognitive load. You're not trying to understand a new concept and new language at the same time. You can just focus on the language.
Exactly. And the boost in confidence was huge for her. From feeling overwhelmed, she started feeling capable. That confidence then transferred to other areas of her English learning, and she felt more brave to try faster content eventually.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? Building that confidence. So, for our listeners who are feeling inspired right now, what are some key tips they can take away to make slow English stories really work for them?
Okay, my first big tip is don't be afraid to listen multiple times. Seriously, listen to the same story 5, 10, even 15 times if you need to. Each time you'll notice something new. You'll catch a word you missed, understand a phrase better, or just feel more comfortable with the flow. Repetition is not a sign of weakness. It's a path to mastery.
That's so true. I used to feel like I was cheating if I listened more than twice, but it's actually how our brains learn best, through repeated exposure. So embrace the repetition.
My second tip is try to summarize the story in your own words. After you've listened a few times, pause and try to explain what happened in the story out loud in simple English. Even if it's just a few sentences, this activates your speaking muscles and forces you to recall the vocabulary and grammar you've just heard.
This is excellent for connecting listening to speaking. You're not just a passive receiver, you're becoming an active user of the language. And you don't need a perfect summary, just get the main points across.
Exactly. And don't worry about mistakes when summarizing. The goal is to practice, not to be perfect. Every attempt is a step forward. My third tip is to combine listening with reading. If a transcript is available, use it. Listen once or twice without it, then listen again while reading the text. This helps you connect the spoken sounds to the written words, which is crucial for both listening and reading comprehension.
Yes, that transcript combination is super powerful. It helps solidify your understanding and clarifies any words you might have misheard. And then, once you've read along, try listening again without the transcript to see how much more you understand.
Absolutely. It's like taking off the training wheels after you've learned to ride a bike. You build confidence with the transcript, then you challenge yourself without it. And my final tip, a bonus one, is to immerse yourself in stories about topics you genuinely find interesting. Whether it's daily life, hobbies, travel, or simple mysteries, choose stories that grab your attention. This makes the learning process feel less like studying and more like enjoying a good story, which is what it should be.
I can't emphasize that enough. When you're interested, your brain is more engaged, and you absorb information so much more easily. It turns learning into a pleasure, not a chore.
So there you have it, everyone. Slow English stories are not just a tool. They're a pathway to more confident, natural, and enjoyable English learning. They give your brain the time it needs, expose you to natural language patterns, and build your vocabulary in a meaningful way.
Don't underestimate the power of starting slow. It builds a strong foundation that will help you tackle faster, more complex English content down the road. Consistency is key, so try to make this a part of your daily routine, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes.
Exactly. Think of it as your daily English warm-up. And remember, every little bit of practice adds up. So find a slow English story you like today, put on your listening ears, and start building that amazing fluency.
We hope this episode has given you some great insights and practical steps. We really want to hear about your experiences with slow English stories, so please let us know in the comments below.
Yes, and if you found this episode helpful, please give us a thumbs up, share it with your fellow English learners, and subscribe to Thesaurus Thrive for more tips and lessons to boost your English. We're here to help you thrive.
Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep speaking. You've got this. We'll catch you in the next episode.
Bye for now.